over these past few days, I've begun to get some of the rejections in for the short story that I had finished up about a month ago. It's the first of my collection that's actually finalized now, and yeah, the rejections have been rolling in. Not rolling in. I've only got a couple, but suffice to say, I've got a few already that have come in, and it's a good reminder, of how long this process really is and how difficult it really is. I mean, man, if you don't have your foot in the door, if you don't have some edge in, this is a very arduous process. Um, it's it's frustrating. It's frustrating because you look at, I think if you're like me, you look at like some of these bigger magazines, and you look at what they post as far as what they're producing. Not so much just even like the not even like the actual magazines that they're putting out, but you just look at like their social media. You go on their social media, look at like their Instagrams and all that stuff, and you kind of follow them, and you see the authors that they're putting out and they're producing, and it's for a lot of these top tier magazines. Obviously, they're all represented. They all have agents. They've all got kind of their in, but man, you just keep reading it, and you're looking at it, and you kind of look at your own stories in comparison. You're like, yeah, I can see how their stories would probably be viewed as better than mine, but man, mine are pretty darn strong. Like mine can definitely, in many respects, I think some of my stories can definitely hang with these people, and yet it's you submit to these smaller tier ones thinking that, hey, you got a pretty good shot, and you start getting rejected, and it's like, man, it's such a fickle business. It's such a subjective thing where, God, it's not even the pros. It's just somebody just happens to really be engaged by the story while people just aren't, and it's tough. It's a very, very tough thing. Um, yeah, it's. I think what makes it much harder too is that it's a very diminishing business. That there are less lit mags than ever before, and it seems there are more writers than ever before, which seems very, very paradoxical. But it just seems like everybody now is trying to write a book. Everyone today is trying to put out their content here. Um, so you got more people than ever before that are interested in writing and doing it and submitting, and you've got less and less magazines now than ever before. It's in Within that, the only people that ever seem to do much reading, especially for short stories, that's stuff that's not necessarily genre. It seems like the only people that ever do any of the reading are other writers, right? Though, if you're a writer, you're doing a lot of reading. Everyone else, it seems like everyone else, reading is such a very, very small pastime here in America, at least. And man, it's just difficult. It's difficult because you can't necessarily outwork it. You can't. Your skill your skill doesn't necessarily make it any better, right? Like your prose does not make your story necessarily any more engaging. It could just be your story's just not very engaging at all, and it's like, well, it's what can you do about it, right? Like if the story's not interested in someone, it's not interested in someone, and that's sort of something that's hard to accept I guess in some ways, but it's just more kind of an annoying thing in a sense where, all right, you do all this work. Basically, it's really, really strong work, and it's like, all right, well, if you're just not enjoying it, I guess nothing else I can do. No amount of hard work can make you enjoy something, right? So it's just tough. It's very, 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 very difficult. Um, but with that, we keep on. I'll still be persistent here in this process. I'm still pushing forward. Hopefully, in the next few weeks, maybe I finally get my first story there published, get it out, and then we can kind of hopefully, fingers crossed, go from there. But man, hearing nothing, it's like, it rocks. It definitely rocks you. Definitely hits you. But fortunately, we'll just keep going. Fun little anecdote to end this. I had a professor once, I think I might have said this on the channel before, but they had said that if they ever got rejected by a single literary magazine, didn't matter what it was. It could be Granta, Paris Review, whatever, any kind of the Atlantic, whatever. If they got rejected, if they submitted to it, and they got rejected, they would fester over it for at least 6 months, and they would not probably ever subscribe to that magazine, probably never submit to that magazine ever again. This professor has obviously had an in from a very young age. He had a somewhat famous, I guess, kind of famous brother. He was in kind of like an indie band when he was very, very young. So again, he was able to get a little bit of traction here and some representation relatively early in his career. So he gets the it explains kind of that mentality, right? We're not so lucky. For most of us, we're not that lucky. We have to find kind of a different way to break in to get this, and it's tough. I don't know how to do it, but it is a struggle. So with that, I'll sign off here, and I will see you all tomorrow.